is a big one today. Kevin Martin from the band Candlebox. I've been a huge fan of theirs for a long time. I remember seeing them in Washington State at a thing called Rockstock. And they had a Tool opening actually for them in 1994. And then I saw them again when they opened for Metallica in Seattle. But their first album, that self-titled debut in 1993, was huge. 7 million copies worldwide. It's interesting, though, when researching the band, finding out how many other bands did not like Candlebox, including Suicidal Tendencies, who were with them on that Metallica tour, and some of the other Seattle bands. And we'll get into some of that. But they persevered, and I think they continue to make really great music, including their newest album, Wolves. And we'll talk about that one and all this stuff all the way from the beginning. So it's a great story. Enjoy it. Welcome, Kevin Martin of Candlebox. How you doing?
Well, I mean, obviously pretty bad.
Palm Springs, huh?
Life.
Weather's nice.
It's beautiful. It's 103 today.
Ooh, that's like hot. I'm in Phoenix. I don't even think we're in the hundreds yet. That's crazy.
You're in Phoenix. You're wearing a Seahawks jersey.
I know. I'm from Seattle, and we'll talk about. Really? Yeah, I'm from Seattle. I lived there my whole life, and then I moved here like 12 years ago just because of the weather. And probably same as you. You live in LA now, so you did the same thing. You left the weather.
That's true. I ran as far away from it as I could.
Yeah. So I guess, I mean, I don't know where to start with your story, but you grew up in San Antonio, then you moved to Seattle when you were 14, despite about what some people think that you moved there in the 90s. You moved there in the 80s. And your first show, you actually played the drums for a band called Radical Youth Penis Brigade. So tell me about that first show. Was that like when you knew this is it? This is what I'm supposed to do, is play music?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think for me, it started really when I was young. My father's a jazz musician. My mother was a singer of the standards and classics and stuff. So music was kind of always in my family. My first instrument was French horn, and then I moved on to clarinet, flute, went from a large instrument to a small instrument, and then back to a large instrument with the drums, which I picked up when I was like 12. So I guess really the first time I started playing drums that's when I knew that's exactly what I wanted to do, was to be a musician. I don't think I ever really thought that it would end up being, that I would have a career 30 years later and still be doing this. But, that first show, in a friend's basement in front of, 10 and 15 of your high school friends, and you're playing punk rock music. There's nothing more thrilling. I'm still kind of the reluctant lead singer. I would much rather be a drummer in a band. So it's something that I've been chasing, going on, whatever, I'm 52 now. So, 40 years I've been chasing that dream of being a drummer in a rock and roll band, and I'm still singing. So, it's the downside of being, who I am from Seattle and singing in Candlebox.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing to get stuck with, though. I mean, there's like people that get stuck in government jobs and all sorts of terrible things. So
true story.
And speaking of bad jobs, so tell me about this shoe store that you worked at as a teenager. So it was owned by Susan Silver, who managed Soundgarden and Alice in Chains. So all these Seattle band people are just popping in, like Andrew Wood from Mother Love Bone and Chris Cornell. And is that where you made a lot of these other musicians?
Yeah, well, the relationship, Susan didn't own it. She just managed it.
Okay, sorry.
It was called John Flubach Shoes. He was a shoe designer that came down from Canada. Initially at a company called Fox and Flubach, which was Peter Fox and John Flubach, and they were just kind of pushing the boundaries of kind of that British punk rock and roll shoe wear that everybody's wearing, creepers and pointy shoes and the platform boots and Doc Martens and stuff. So it was a place in Seattle where you would get those. And Susan was managing it. And at the same time, she had an office behind the shoe store that she managed the bands out of. And that was Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Screaming Trees, a lot of that kind of historical great grunge that came out of Seattle. Susan was the original manager. And the band guys would come in to get flyers. She would print the flyers up and say, stop by Flubog's and grab your flyers. Because Seattle's, you remember, it's one of those cities where you could actually still tag a telephone pole.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that started. And that's where I met all the guys.
Where was the shoe store, though? Which part of Seattle? I mean, probably most people don't know Seattle, but I mean, I used to go down there all the time. We'd take the bus and go to downtown Seattle. Was it in Queen Anne or where?
No. It was right on First Avenue. I think First in Pine.
Oh, okay.
First and Pioneer. What's the one that's Z Club was next to? Whatever street that was, Wall maybe.
Okay.
So it was right across the street from like Z Club, but it's in Pike Place Market. So
okay.
First
So it's by
Avenue.
the fish thing, and yeah.
Yeah, so it was right down there, and it's now like a coffee shop or a delicatessen or something. But yeah, so and I was living down on First Avenue at Stewart, so I would just walk up to work every day, which is great. You know, I mean,
So you were living like in the heart of it. You weren't in the suburbs or something.
No, my parents took when we first moved to Seattle, moved to Mercer Island, which I couldn't stand, which is a little suburb in between the east side and Seattle.
It's an upper class, I guess you would say, for people who don't know the area. It's like the Beverly Hills of Seattle, right?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, Mercer Island is incredibly wealthy. The funny thing is, obviously, I lived right across the street from the school, so not on the wealthiest part of the island, but it did have its projects, if you will.
I didn't know that.
The lower income housing, not lower income housing in the sense of like the Bronx or something like that, but really it had a part of the island that was affordable, and it was right across from the high school, so which was nice because I could just walk to school every day. But as soon as I got the chance to get downtown, I did. I think I left high school middle of my senior year in '87 and was moved downtown, and I'd take the bus if I needed to go back to class. But I didn't really finish school. I got my degree, my high school diploma from basically work. I really didn't have any school to finish up. So I was one of the lucky ones that was able to leave, high school at the age of 17 and start working downtown.
Yeah. So it was around this time, around age 18, 87, you kind of had a pivotal moment that changed the course of your life forever. I think you stole money from your parents to buy drugs, but you went to go see this concert, and it was Midnight Oil. And the singer, Peter Garrett, floored you so much that you quit. You kind of dependent on drugs, you said, and you quit your dependency on drugs. Not necessarily, you still smoke weed or do mushrooms, but you quit. You didn't want to be like dependent on that. So what was it about that performance that made you quit drugs? I don't know his backstory. Is he a former addict, or was it something about the music, or what was it?
No, I don't know if he's a former addict or not. I think it was just the sense that he was so commanding, and so such a force to be reckoned with as a lead singer. The show was the Beds Are Burning tour, which of course was, a hugely successful record for them. And they were touring the States on it. And it scared the shit out of me to the point where I was like, that's what I want to do. And if I'm going to do that, I need to stop, running away from what it is that I want. And these drugs, that's what they do. So I did actually quit drugs entirely, except, I occasionally do mushrooms and like you said, smoke pot, because I believe that if it comes from the ground, it should be put in your body. But
so what drugs were you doing at the time that were you doing like ecstasy and coke or something? Or?
Yeah, a lot of that bad psychedelic stuff, acid and whatnot,
okay.
which was just not good. It wasn't benefiting me in any way, shape whatsoever. So yeah, that was it. I mean, that show changed my entire direction. That's why I named the band Candlebox, actually, after one of his lyrics as well. I mean, he was such an important part of my life at that moment, just by being who he was.
Yeah. So then, so when you formed Candlebox, again, you were a drummer, but somebody asked you hey, can you sing on these demos? And you're like, I'm not a singer, but they must have heard something because they heard you do backup vocals or something. How did they know that you could sing that well?
I don't think they knew I could sing well. Rick was an interesting character. His name is Rick Vaughn. He was actually this guitar player that was running Reciprocal Studios in Seattle as well, as an engineer. And he'd heard me singing like at a friend's party or something, like just, hanging out, and somebody was playing acoustic, and we were just singing, Black Crowes songs and stuff. And he's like, man, you should come sing on some stuff. I got this kind of bluesy thing going, which was called Uncle Duke. And that was with Scott Mercado, Candlebox's original drummer, and his bass player named Perry Alfinis. And I was like, sure. So I started singing on the stuff, and that was it. Became Candlebox, and that was the rest of my career.
Did you guys have any other names you tossed around before? I mean, obviously Uncle Duke, but was there anything else before you decided on Candlebox, or?
No, we just had that day where we had hired our bass player Barty, We had some shows that we were starting to book, and we had to commit to something as a band name.
Mm-hmm.
None of us were crazy about Uncle Duke. Rick had already left the band at that point, and Perry had left as well. So Scott, Pete, Barty, and myself just sat down and started going through lyrics of our favorite songs. And I came across this lyric in the Minato song "Boxed in Like Candles" because he's speaking about the Aboriginal tribes in Australia. And I thought that was a really beautiful imagery that he was trying to metaphorically speak of these people that you can't just put in this box. You know, they're way too bright for that. And so I said, what about Candlebox? And the guys were like, that's great.
There you go. So then the first couple shows, I mean, you're not selling out arenas in the first shows. Like it's like 6 people showing up, but then I think, was there some girl that kind of helped you out? Like she was either a fan or a girl you were dating and she brought her friends. Yeah, your girlfriend at the time. So she brought her friends and then it just kind of grew. And then you start playing by 92, you're playing some of the biggest clubs in Seattle. But so for those first few years before you guys got signed, like talk about the scene at that time, playing the clubs in Seattle. That's gotta be a lot. You're smiling. You must love this time.
No, it was awful, man. I mean,
it was awful. Really?
We were, you know, we were considered, and I think probably if you ask a lot of the bands, you know, from Seattle that were successful or had some sort of minor success, I think they all would tell you that they didn't know where we came from. We kind of came out of nowhere. Pete and, you know, Scott had a career and a history of, you know, with metal bands in Seattle, Myth and Realms, you know, Jeff Tate's first band, you know, but that really wasn't the scene in the 90s. It was this kind of, you know, grunge rock and roll, whatever you want to call it. I call it acid rock that was happening. So, you know, here comes these guys from, you know, the East Side playing this kind of big arena rock style of music in friends' basements. And we couldn't get a gig in any of the clubs in Seattle. No one would let us play. Then we produced this tape. We recorded on Easter Sunday of 92, which that's what Far Behind and You came from those demos. Those are the demos that are on the album. And we had that tape and we started shopping it around. And then our friends in a band called Sweetwater gave us our very first kind of big sold out gig. They were headlining Rock Candy and they had us open, and that was it. That was what kicked it off for us. But we couldn't get a gig in any of the clubs in Seattle to save our lives. We had to play this place called Mad Dogs, which was like North Seattle. We had to play West Seattle at like some sports club. No one would give us a gig in any of the major venues in the city.
So what year was that when Sweetwater gave you the gig?
92.
92.
Summer of 92.
So that's when you started playing the big clubs. So then I'm assuming you're playing like Rock Candy and Crocodile and DV8 and Far Side and all those great clubs that people from Seattle probably don't know, but
OK Hotel, ditto. Yeah.
Oh yeah. OK Hotel. I forgot about that place. So I heard you say that there was no camaraderie in Seattle. Like Kurt Cobain hated everyone. You know, Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains, there wasn't much love between them. But maybe the Melvins, everybody loved they seem to get along with everyone, right?
Yeah. I mean, the Melvins, I think, and Mudhoney or Green River, if you will, those were kind of the founding. So the camaraderie thing is interesting because Mudhoney and the Melvins really, as you know, Mudhoney, Mark Arm being from Green River was kind of that real foundation of what was happening with the punk scene up there, of course. And then when Nirvana came along and the success of Bleach, everybody kind of thought that was going to be the real movement. Although Soundgarden had the stronghold on like the real rock and roll thing that was happening, and Alice in Chains was kind of up and coming. Really, it was that kind of Mark Arm had kind of established that sort of relationship with all these bands. So they all kind of ancestrally played together, each one of those musicians. From, you know, Jeff and Stone from Pearl Jam were in Green River with Mark. And I think that King Buzzo and Mark had something happen before Green River. So, you know, it all was kind of like everybody had played in the same band. But the interesting thing is like with Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam goes out with Alice in Chains as Mookie Blaylock, and I think for like 3 or 4 weeks, something like that. But Pearl Jam's never taken Alice in Chains on the road, ever.
But didn't but Pearl Jam and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden formed Temple of the Dog, and then Mad Season was members of Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, and Screaming Trees. So isn't there some connections there, like you said? Like,
well, actually, Pearl Jam and Soundgarden didn't do Temple of the Dog. Chris Cornell did Temple of the Dog, and Eddie Vedder sang on it. And that was before Pearl Jam was Pearl Jam. That's when they were Mookie Blaylock. And of course, if you're talking about the relationship with Chris and Jeff and Stone, that all comes from the Green River days, right? So that's what I was saying earlier, because it's so ancestral. So it just kind of seemed like, even though there were those kinds of relationships, Pearl Jam's never really kind of, been super supportive of really the kind of anyone from the Seattle scene. Mad Season was Mike McCready with Layne Staley and Mark Lanigan from Screaming Trees and Barrett Martin from Screaming Trees. But again, it's not the same thing. Like, those relationships had been spawned years before, but it wasn't like everybody was talking about one another's records in interviews, or like saying, oh, you should buy the new Alice in Chains record, or Eddie Vedder saying, God, the new Alice record's brilliant. Layne sounds amazing. There was none of that. And it was a very cliquey scene in Seattle. And so we were always kind of considered the redheaded stepchild of that scene. Like I mentioned earlier, if you ask any of the bands that had any kind of success, they would say, well, we didn't even know where the fuck Candlebox came from.
Well, somebody must have liked you, because they signed you, and then you get the debut album. I love it. I love the album then, and I love it now. But the artwork, I mean, there are some iconic artwork albums, like Don McLean from American Pie, that thumb, I had him on the show. I was asking him about that. And even the Seattle bands like Nirvana Nevermind, The Baby, and Alice in Chains Dirt. But your guys' cover, that's the one thing I never understood. It's the band. It's a picture of the band. It's not a bad picture, but you guys are in a field of flowers. What was the story behind that?
Those are the tulips that they have, that they grow every year for the Tulip Festival that happens in Washington State.
So yeah. Okay.
And so we went out to Bainbridge Island, or not Bainbridge. What island did we go to? I can't remember. One of the Orcas Islands up there.
Oh, okay.
And that's where most of the flowers are shot. We wanted something that kind of represented the band, in the sense that we're not like this, heavy, dark, melancholic band, where there's something light to what we do. And there's beauty to the rock. And Kevin Kerslake, who shot the pictures for us, it was all that was all his idea, to go out there and shoot. And of course, the iconic drive-in theater that's out there on the Orcas Islands, and all of it kind of, there's a mausoleum out there, which a lot of people don't know about. That's out there as well. So it really was about kind of establishing the band in our kind of our own world, rather than kind of going along with a lot of the other imagery that was happening with kind of the album covers at the time up there. Or Kevin Westlake, rather. I'm sorry, not Kevin Kerslake. Or I'm saying his last name wrong. Anyways, but Soundgarden ended up using him on the Super Unknown record, and he shot a lot of the footage for their album and videos and stuff in the same place that he shot us. So I think it kind of, it must say a little bit about what people think of the band, rather than we're just a couple knuckleheads that some guy's getting paid to take pictures of.
Yeah. So I think this is, you talk about back to the camaraderie thing. Like, you talk about, that there wasn't that kind of, people weren't trying to help each other out, but you guys, you make it. I mean, you got this album, it's doing well. And so you offered to take out your peers on the road, the band Sweetwater and Green Apple Quickstep, who are both great Seattle bands. If people don't know, they should check them out. But they actually turned you down, because was there some resentment that they thought that they should have been the ones that you should be opening for them?
Well, Sweetwater didn't turn us down. They actually came out with us, and we're still really great. We're still really great friends of them. But it wasn't so much the Green Apple Quickstep guys didn't want to go out with us. It was management. They were managed by Kelly Curtis, who manages Pearl Jam, and Kelly's, I guess the girl who was there, Krisha, was their manager. She just didn't think it was the right fit for Green Apple. Years later, when I asked Ty, why did you never went out on the road with us? He's like, you never asked. I was like, dude, we've been asking you to tour with us for the past 3 records. That kind of upset him, that his management never bothered to tell them that we had invited them, but we did take Goodness out with us. Carrie Ockery, who was in a band called Hammerbox back in the day, and Chris and Rick Friel were in Goodness with Danny Newcomb. Chris and Rick, of course, were in Shadow with Mike McCready. So we were able to take some of the bands that we were good friends with on the road, and some of them would go out with us. We liked touring with our friends, and that was the thing that we wanted. And it was difficult to be Candlebox from Seattle. It wasn't an easy process at all, being those kids that nobody really wanted to see succeed.
Yeah, and it's kind of like this ethical dilemma that you faced at one point. You're doing a show in Boston, and there's a Seattle band. I won't say the name, you can say it if you want, but there's a Seattle band.
My Sister's Machine.
Okay.
And his name was Owen.
Okay.
Owen.
Okay. So anyway, so your equipment breaks down, and these guys have talked shit. Or no, I'm sorry, their equipment breaks down, and these guys have talked shit about you for years. And I don't know what they said. They talk shit about you, and so they said, oh well, we'll just use Candlebox equipment. We know them. We're both from Seattle, so they'll let us use it. It'll be fine. And I'm thinking of this as an ethical dilemma. Now this is the chance for Candlebox to take the high road and step up. And then I rethought it and I go, wait a minute. No, because you know why? If you did that and you let them use your equipment, you're basically enabling them and letting them talk shit and get away with it. And now I think you're kind of teaching them a lesson, because basically you told them to fuck off, right?
Well, no, we didn't. We did let them use
what
they wanted to do. They wanted to swap places with us on the show, and they wanted, and we were direct support at the time of Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, and it was for WAAF radio show in Boston, and our single Change and You, they were going gangbusters in Boston. So like, oh well, our gear will arrive in time for us, so maybe we'll just swap with Candlebox, and they can take our slot. And we're like, that's not happening, and it wasn't really us that said it. It was our tour manager Mark, who had been the tour manager for the Chili Peppers for years, had been in the punk scene for a long, long time. And he knew what was going on. And he went to them and he said, listen, I know what kind of shit you talk about the band. And this isn't coming from them. This is coming from me. And we're not going to let you do it. I'm not going to let you use the gear. They're not even going to know about this. And we didn't know about it until honestly about a year later, when we ended up getting drunk with Owen, the guitar player, at a bar in Seattle, and he's like, yeah, your tour manager came in and said, you guys can go fuck yourselves. And he said, and he was right. We were being dicks about the whole thing. But sometimes that that happened to us a lot, and sometimes you do have to take the upper hand and say, you sleep in the bed you made. We're sorry your gear's not here, but you're certainly not going to take our fucking time slot. But we let them use our gear, and
nice.
and they had a good show. We never played with them again. But it's just one of those things. I don't know if you know the band Gruntruck from Seattle.
Oh yeah,
I was a huge
Tribe. The song Tribe is so good.
Yeah, and that lead singer was a total dick to me. At the off ramp one night when he asked me, how the hell did you guys sell out 3 nights at the Paramount? And I said, I go, honestly, man, I don't know what to tell you. I don't really have an answer for that. And he's like, yeah, I don't know either. And that's kind of the shit. That's the shit we got in Seattle. But it made us a better band. And at the end of the day, we're still here. We're still making music, and people can say what they want and talk the kind of shit they want. But at the end of the day, it's really about your music and who you are inside that matters.
So how do you deal with that, like mentally? Does it piss you off? Does it make you sad, or do you just laugh it off?
Well, I mean, with Ben, because I loved Gruntruck so much, and and sadly he passed away of leukemia, I think a couple of years ago. That really hurt, because I thought for sure, he of all people would, be the one to say, man, congratulations. But, I mean, there just was, people were bitter in that city because, like I said earlier, nobody really knew who we were and where we came from. People assumed we moved there to get signed, even though I'm the only one who moved to Seattle. Barty and Pete and Scott were all born there.
Mm-hmm.
But it just, so, I laugh it off now, but of course at the time it probably broke my heart. Especially Ben, just because I respected him so much. But, I mean, it's all good. I mean, we're still here, and, life moves on.
Do you feel like you deserved your success?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if deserved is the right word. I think we worked really hard as a band to get where we are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the rapid success of the band certainly, I don't think what helped at all. I mean, it was just too fast. We couldn't really balance the success with our responsibilities as musicians. But I think we certainly worked hard enough for it. Deserved, I think, is a really weird word when it comes to art. I think if you work hard enough and you achieve what it is that you set out to accomplish, then that's your success. Deserved, I don't know if you think about the word, there's just a lot of negative in deserving something. And I just would rather not use that word, I think, with Candlebox's success.
Fair enough. Okay. So 1994, you guys did a show called Rockstock. I don't know if you remember that one. I was there.
Yep.
My buddies were there, and Tool opened for you guys. I'm not a huge Tool fan, but I like Tool. I had a Tool hat, actually. But I have a couple buddies who are diehard Tool fans. So I got to ask, is there some sort of memory or tidbit or anything about Tool? Did you have any interactions with them at the show, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, Adam, is it Adam? The guitar player is originally from the Tri-Cities, or he grew up in the Tri-Cities.
I didn't know
that. We had friends that were, friends with them. I got to, how many bands in their lifetime can say that Tool opened for us?
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I think it was a co-headline bill, but
you guys played last, though. I remember, technically.
Yeah. And Radiohead was on another one we did that Radiohead opened for us as well.
Right.
So I got that going for
That's cool.
But they were great guys. I mean, listen, I first saw them. They came through when we were making our first record. They came through Seattle and played the Rock Candy, and there were about 15 people in the audience. And that was just after Opiate had come out, the EP. So Seattle wasn't really keen on who they were at that point. And I was one of those 15 people that showed. It was amazing. So to watch that growth of Undertow to what it became, I mean, and what Tool has become since then is mind blowing. And I think that band is, next to Traffic and Cream and any of those kind of prog rock Rush bands, stuff like that. Tool is just, every single record is mind bending. I don't know how they do it, and I certainly don't know how Maynard, waits until the record's done to do his vocals. I mean, that's, I think, a really interesting thing. He does the same thing with Perfect Circle. The band's finish the record, then he goes in and sings his parts. I think the only band that he actually writes the music and the lyrics at the same time is Pussifer. So he's a fascinating human being and a really, really nice guy.
I'd love to have him on the show someday. He'd be a tough interview though too, because he's kind of an introvert.
I think so. Yeah. Super. And he's having trouble because he had COVID, and he's having a lot of trouble with his lungs.
Oh, terrible. But so you guys, it's interesting. I feel like maybe they didn't really know where to place you as a band, like, cause you guys opened for Rush and Metallica. And then I remember 1994 Metal Edge magazine said you guys were the best new band. Were you flattered by that, or did you kind of want to stay away from the heavy metal label?
Oh, I mean, of course, nobody wants to be labeled metal unless you're a metal band. We were, for us, we were just like an alternative pop rock band. Very similar to Pearl Jam, just an arena rock band that wrote big soaring songs, I've often compared us to, the Journey of Seattle. And Pearl Jam, in my opinion, was kind of like the Def Leppard of Seattle, just with great big rock, arena rock songs. That Pearl Jam 10 album is, just full of sweeping melodies and big solos and great rock songs, and we always kind of compared ourselves to just an arena rock band, blues-based rock and roll. The metal thing was something that Maverick tried really, really hard to stay away from, our label. And, it was inevitable because we all had long hair and played rock and roll. I mean, Pearl Jam was on Metal Edge, it's
sure.
If Spin magazine takes you under their wing, then all of a sudden you're alternative. That didn't happen to us.
Yeah. So you did kind of have a little bit of a friendship with Layne Staley from Alice in Chains, right? Didn't tell me the story about he gave you like some sort of a Mad Season album cover that or album. It was like an etching of the album cover that, you know, was kind of a special gift. Do you still have that?
I do. He gave me three of them. He did etchings for that album, and then they ended up using the one of him and Demery as the album cover. And I was at his apartment with my buddy Johnny Bacalus and Aaron Saravo, and Mike McCready was there, and then we were all hanging out. And Layne had just gotten out of rehab and was doing well, and just we were catching up. And I was looking through the etchings. He's like, "Hey man, you should take a couple of those." And I was like, "Yeah, I can't do that." And he's like, "Oh, please take as many as you want." And he's like, "Bring them over here, I'll sign them." And so I did. And then McCready was like, "Dude, you made me pay for mine." And Layne's like, "Yeah, but you're not a singer." And that was kind of, we all kind of laughed. And that was really the first time anybody in the Seattle music scene kind of, recognized what I was doing as a musician.
Mm-hmm.
And it was nice. I mean, Layne was such a sweetheart. He was the kindest, most gentle rock star I'd ever met and known. And it's sad to learn of his passing the day my mom called me and woke me up when he passed. And I had just seen him a couple of weeks before in Seattle at a coffee shop, and he looked really good and healthy. So everybody was cheering for him. But those demons, those heroin demons, are a motherfucker.
Yeah, tell me about it. But so you guys, I don't think anyone in the band did heroin, but you this is around the time that you started to kind of get into some people got into the drugs a little too much. Is that because I always wondered with that second album, like, I don't even know. And again, I lived in Seattle. I don't even remember hearing the songs on the radio. And I was like wondering like what happened. And then I kind of did some research, and it sounds like not only the drug thing, but also it was like the perfect storm because Maverick Records, they had just fired all their, was it Happy Pills where they fired all their promotions people?
No, yeah, Lucy was the record where they were focused on Alanis Morissette and the Deftones.
Deftones, right?
Yeah. That's why Alanis's record had come out while we were recording, and the Deftones was coming out in the fall or the spring of next year, or the following year rather. So we were kind of thrown in on the back burner by the label, and then of course there was a lot of issues within the band going on that made it very difficult to record that record. So.
Yeah, didn't you play drums on some of the songs?
Yeah, I played drums on some of the songs, played guitar on a lot of stuff. And yeah, we struggled to get that record done. I ultimately kind of said to the label, I think we need to put this record away and revisit it, give us a little more break, because I don't think we were ready, but they kind of forced us to put it out. And it was, it wasn't the best record for us to do at the time.
Yeah, and then the third album, the Happy Pills, the single "It's All Right." I love that song. It's like so brilliant. But this is kind of the point where now you want to be done with Maverick Records, because I think this is when they fired the promotions team. And so tell me this story. Like, you're actually, I always thought, I know Madonna owned Maverick Records, but I thought she was more like a silent partner. But you like talked to her on the phone and shit. Like you were arguing with her, trying to get out of the contract.
Yeah, we had a long argument. Freddie DeMann, who had started the label with Madonna, they were buying him out of the label. They didn't want him running it anymore. And it was just kind of, it seemed like it was a runaway train at that point. That was on a track that was really, really wobbly, and they didn't really have any direction, and they didn't know what they were doing. That was our opinion. Of course, what did we know? We're just, through four guys in a band, playing rock and roll, but we could feel that things were slipping. And Freddie, actually, the owner of the label, just said, "Listen, don't make this record. Just try and get out of your contract, because they're buying me out and it's not going to be good." And of course it wasn't. I mean, "It's All Right" was a single that I don't even know if it reached the top 10 on any format.
I think it was 2 on the rock songs.
Oh, was it?
I think so.
And then we tried to follow that up with Sometimes, but I always felt that the first single should have been Happy Pills. If we're going to be a rock and roll band, and that's where our foundation in the music business was, that's where we're going to live, we should release a rock song called, which is Happy Pills, which is my favorite song on that record. And they fought us on it. And of course they went with "It's All Right" because they were trying to cross over, like I think Train had done with, like they were about to release Drops of Jupiter,
Oh, okay.
or it had just come
Yeah.
out. So they thought that we were going to cross over like that, and it didn't happen. You know, it was a again, you know, record. I think now it's just about to go gold.
Hmm.
You know, you think like our first record sold 7 million copies worldwide, 4 in the States. Our second record sold 1 million worldwide, and our third record's only about to go gold. It's quite a decline.
Why do you think that was? Because I hear new stuff you're making and it's really good. So I don't understand the
Thank you.
music business sometimes.
Well, you know, I mean, we weren't media darlings. There wasn't, you know, an interview with the band every record that came out. There wasn't, you know, a Rolling Stone album cover or a magazine cover. There wasn't a Spin magazine cover. There wasn't, you know, reviews of our records. I mean, it just people thought that Far Behind was going to be it for us, and they left us alone. Now our fans, of course, have kept us alive for 30 years now, but
Yeah.
you know, your fans don't keep you in the public eye, you know, like a marketing team does, you know, and I think that was the real was with the band was that, you know, Maverick lost this entirely great marketing team from Warner Brothers, and you know, we lost in that process our image, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I mean, around this time, you still had to do some. I think you had a throat issue and you had to cancel some shows, but then you got an offer to open up for Aerosmith. I mean, so it's still even '98. You say the record's not doing as well, but you're still opening for Aerosmith. That's pretty cool. So I think there was a short time around this time that Shannon Larkin was in the band. I'm just curious because that guy's been a part of three of my favorite bands: Ugly Kid Joe, Candlebox, and Godsmack. Like, what is the secret to his success? I mean, obviously he's a phenomenal drummer, but he must be really like a joy to work with too, to continue to get that kind of work and be invited to these projects.
Shannon's an incredibly talented drummer. But more than that, he's a beautiful human being. He's got a great soul. He's a kind person. And he's just a lot of fun to be with, man. He when he digs into songs and the writing process and playing, I mean, it's just a joy to watch. And he was managed when he was in Snot. We were managed by John Reese during the Happy Pills record, and John had managed Snot when Shannon was playing that, and then Ugly Kid Joe as well. So when Dave Cruzen left in 1999, John Reese just called and said, "Listen, I managed this kid Shannon who played in Snot and Ugly Kid Joe." And I was like, "I love them." And he came down to rehearsal, and we just hit it off right away.
Yeah. Okay. So then you did some more shows, and then eventually the band kind of falls apart. You do some solo stuff, and then you did this band called The Gracious Few with it was like basically like a super group with you and some Candlebox members and members of Live. Tell me about that group. What happened with that one?
That was a labor of love, man. That was a record that made no money, cost us a fortune to make. But you know, we're all the best of friends, and that, you know, that's kind of why we did it. Ed was on the outs with the guys. They were looking to work with somebody that maybe they could enjoy working with a little more. And Chad Taylor called me up and said, "Let's do something." I was like, "I'd love to." You know, we talked about it for years. I'd known them since 1992. But like, you know, we had no record deal. We had no label. We just made this record and put it out and went out on the road in a tour bus. And we played shows for whatever the door collected. It was very punk rock, and it was a lot of fun to do. And I think, you know, we all kind of teased that we were dying to do it again, just because it's such an outlet for the five of us, really.
Yeah.
To make music that there's no real, you know, there's no strings attached to it. It's whatever we want to do. And it's more like a jazz fusion. You know, no, I'm just kidding. But we really just we make what we want to make, you know, and I love those guys, and we talk, you know, constantly on the phone, and we keep in touch with one another at least once a month, because we really love one another as brothers.
That's awesome. So then, yeah, and then you get back together with Candlebox. You guys do a best of record. You do a record called Into the Sun. That was a tough one. And then, but the 2016 album, not your latest one, but the one before that, Disappearing in Airports. You say that was your favorite record that you made. And I have a question. This is just a total selfish question, because I think I'm the weirdo. I really like the song I Want It Back. I feel like it's so catchy. I love the backing vocals. It's got a great bass line and a chorus. This song wasn't even released as a single. But you got to give me something about that song. I can't stop listening to it. I love that song.
Thank you.
How would you describe it to the listener? I'm terrible at describing music, but I think it's such a good song.
Thank you. I love that song as well. We wanted the label to release it as a single. They just didn't have the marketing budget to do it. Because that's, I have a distribution deal, indie deal with Pavement Entertainment. So
okay,
if they don't have the marketing money to do it, we can't go after the single. But that song was inspired by Ryan Adams' cover version of "Out of the Woods" by Taylor Swift off of her 1989 record. And I had been listening to Ryan Adams's 1989 album, and his version of "Out of the Woods" felt so desperate and alone. And I just put myself in the position to imagine, if I fucked up my relationship with my wife and my son, like, how that must really, how it would destroy me. And I wanted to write a song around that. So that's kind of where I came up with that, lyrical process of that record. It's like, I fucked up, and let me fix it. And how many guys go through that, or how many women or men get an opportunity for a second chance if they do something like that, and that's really where it came from. And it's got a huge Kings of Leon influence in it as well, which I love the Kings of Leon. But yeah, it was a really easy song to write. Once I was able to put myself in the perspective of that character of losing everything and trying to repair it.
Okay, yeah, because that makes sense then. Yeah, because that's like emotionally, I feel like it hit me, and also just so catchy. So I'm surprised that.
Thank you.
I feel like you could put that song on like either a 90s rock or today's rock hits playlist, and everyone would say this fits right in with every other like great song. Right? So yeah.
Oh, thank you.
It's one of those hidden gems that it was funny. I asked Vinny Dombrowski, you've toured with Sponge, and I asked him a question one time. I said, of the albums that you've made since the big one, what song, there was like one song that he thought should have been a hit. And I went back and listened to it after the interview, and I was like, this is a really good song. I don't remember what it was now, but there's so many songs like that should be huge that aren't. I hate that. It makes me mad. But
yeah, Sponge is a great band, man.
Yeah.
He's a hell of a songwriter, great singer. And, and I think an acquired taste for a lot of people. It's probably why Sponge didn't do better, because it was so eclectic, and Vinny's voice is so eclectic. That's, rock and roll's a weird place, man. Like, years ago when they were forming Velvet Revolver, Matt and I are great friends, and he had produced some demos for me back in '96, and we've been friends ever since. When they were looking for a singer, Matt had asked me to come down, and Slash said, I'm not a fan of his voice. So, that's kind of like what you've got really when it comes to rock and roll music is, as much as some people love you, there's going to be somebody that doesn't like what you do or what you sound like. And, that's a hard thing as a singer. And I think in Vinny's case, great songwriter, I think he's a great singer, and he's got such an eclectic, interesting voice. But that's a hard thing for some people to stomach sometimes, that kind of singing. Even like Miles Kennedy, a lot of people love his voice, but there's a lot of people who don't like that kind of operatic rock thing. But in Slash's case, it works so well with what he's doing. And of course, Alter Bridge and what Miles has done over the years.
Yeah.
Again, great singer, acquired taste for some people.
That's crazy. I think that's the headline right there, that Kevin Martin almost tried out for a Velvet Revolver. I think that that would have been cool.
When Scott didn't show up for one rehearsal, they couldn't find him for about a week. Matt said, "Can you get down to the studio?" And I got in my car, started driving down. He called me back and said, "Hey, you just showed up. I'll call you back." And that was it. That was my one shot.
Damn it. So close. That would have been cool to play with those guys. But so anyways, back to the Candlebox story. In 2018, the founding members of the band leave to do these like day jobs. And this is interesting. I interview a lot of bands, and I hear these stories. Bands leave to do day jobs. I think you said Barty is an attorney. So just for you, I mean, you can't answer the question for them, but for you, why have you never left? Why have you never gotten burned out on the music business or tried something else? Or
maybe because I don't have the college degree that Barty has.
Okay, fair enough.
No, man, I think it's mainly just because it's been my soul since I can remember, man. I mean, honestly, it's really been the only thing I've thought about since I was, walking at the age of 1. I mean, music has been in my life since the beginning of my being, and it will be in my life when my being ends. It's all I want to do. And I tease all the time, oh, it's gonna be the last year, and I'll give it up in like 2 years or something. But I will tell you this: when I hit 60, I will not be doing this, because I know that my voice won't be at that level that I want it to be at, and I'm not Robert Plant, and I'm not Ozzy Osbourne. I don't have their careers. I don't have the longevity and history that they have. So I'm prepared to shut things down in about 8 years. So get it while you can.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I'll definitely have to see you guys. I've seen you 3 times, so I'll have to see you another time. So let's talk about the new album. It's interesting because the theme is about division and lost direction, but it was actually recorded in 2019 before 2020. So, I mean, I guess this is just the way things have kind of been going in the world. But I mean, you tell me, I don't want to blab on anymore, but you tell me what this album's about.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, we saw it starting, right around the time that Trump started running for president. When he started his campaign, this rhetoric of divisiveness, and it's classic. I gotta be careful with this word, because you're gonna have fans that aren't gonna agree with me, but it's classic narcissism. It's classic sociopathic behavior.
Well, that's pretty. If you look up the definition of narcissistic personality disorder, I mean, I'm sorry, but yeah, he fits that definition for sure. I think even his fans would have to agree he's a narcissist for sure.
Well, and you keep telling the story, and you keep feeding that line. People believe it,
right.
and that's been going on. I'm certainly, Donald Trump's not the first person to do that. I mean, that's how our government's been running the country for the past 300 years. That's how most governments run. That's how most societies run. There's a constant misinformation that's being fed, and that's what allows them to get what they desire. And that's what this record's really about: is this divisive nature that society has accepted and become, and these lone wolves. I mean, you think about the number of murders by guns that have happened since January 1st of this year. It's insane, man. It's crazy what's happening right now. And this does not come, just out of the blue. This has been it's been burning its way through our bellies for a long, long time. And people are losing their minds, and it's incredibly, incredibly disturbing. And I just, I wanted to write a record that kind of tells those stories. I've got a song in here called "Nothing Less to Lose," which is my favorite song, and it was inspired by Ace of Spades by Motorhead. I wanted something that felt that way. But really, this song talks about these lone wolves that are out here right now. Like, fuck it, man, I don't care, and that's scary. That's really scary. I can't believe that this is what's happening in the United States right now, and it seems to be at its boiling point right now. And I don't even know when this is going to explode, if it can get any bigger. It's really disturbing. But Wolves is about who we become, what we become, and in all facets. There is the wolf pack, there is the lone wolf, there is the hurt wolf, there's the angry wolf. I mean, there's all sorts of things out there, and that's kind of why I've decided to call the album Wolves.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you think that part of it's being locked down, everyone's kind of going stir crazy? Do you think now that hopefully concerts are coming back, people can come together? Because when I go to a Candlebox concert or Guns N' Roses or whatever, I mean, I'm sure there's people that are fans of Trump, people that hate Trump, people that like, this or that. I mean, everyone just comes together and goes, okay, we're a fan of this. I mean, or like Seahawks, you go to a Seahawks game. I mean, everybody's just a fan of the Seahawks, and that's like something that brings people together. I feel like we've kind of lost that. Don't you think that's a big piece of it?
Yeah. And I mean, let's hope that that's what happens. Let's hope that it's music that actually, brings this, this country back together, the world back together, because I think music has brought the world together so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can forget our differences and just agree to disagree and accept that there's something wrong, how do we fix it? The Constitution begins with we the people, and we run this country, and it is our tax dollars that are paying for everything that's happening. And we have a right to speak up, and we have a right to protest. Looting and all that other shit is just opportunist. And that's unfortunate, but you have opportunism in everything. And you can't change that in people. The people that feel that they deserve something, again, is that word, are the ones that are, causing a lot of the problems. But at the same time, we need to respect one another, and we need to respect one another's human rights, and Black lives do matter. And there is, you can go back to World War II when these GIs came back, and you look at New Jersey, or Long Island rather, where there was a law written in that Black GIs were not allowed to buy homes in certain neighborhoods. That's systemic racism, and it's been going on for a long, long time. And it's unfortunate. And, if people are going to disagree with me, that's fine. Agree to disagree, but accept that something is happening and something is wrong. And it's got to change, man. And we have to come together and make that change happen. We have to respect one another's human rights,
Well, yeah, I don't think anybody can argue with the history there, but don't you think it's gotten better or it feels like maybe now it's getting worse again? I don't know.
It hasn't gotten better, because once you start with systemic racism and redlining neighborhoods, it stays that way. It's okay. Maybe people are starting to understand that there's a problem, but the laws haven't changed.
Well, redlining is illegal, isn't it?
It's illegal now, but those neighborhoods are still redlined. I mean, every one of them, it still exists that way, and that's why you have the Bronx. That's why you have the projects in Cabrini Green and places like that, because of that. And, in Los Angeles, I don't know if you know this, but they just gave back $72 million property in Manhattan Beach because they stole it from a Black family.
I heard about that.
Yeah. In the early 1900s. And they just gave it back. And this property is worth $72 million, and it was owned by a Black family, and it was taken from them by that city because they wanted it. And it's just now changing. So if that's what's occurring, then yeah, let's make that change happen now, and again, you're going to have some people that are listening to this are going to disagree with me, and it's fine, but do the research.
But
know what you're talking about.
Well, I think just having these conversations sometimes and talking about it, I like hearing both sides. Actually, I really like hearing both. I'm probably in the middle somewhere. So I like hearing both sides and both perspectives, and then kind of making up my own mind going, okay, well, this makes
that's what you should
sense
do.
To me. Yeah. I don't like to you talk about Trump, or you can talk about Biden or what. I don't like any politicians, to be honest. I mean, there's very few that I go, oh, that guy's actually like really smart, and I like what they say. And I think that's where we get into trouble too, is like people just following, not even politicians, but people in the media. They say, oh, they just agree with everything that person says. And that's dangerous for both sides, really. So, but yeah, anyways, we got off on a huge tangent, which is fascinating. I like hearing your opinions on this stuff, but yeah, so your album is kind of about that theme. It's got some great songs, and that's tough sometimes when you're interviewing bands and they have new stuff, and you have to talk about it. But I really like these songs. I like the two songs I've heard, My Weakness, which is, you said it's kind of like an 80s pop, Brian and Adams inspired song. I really like that one. You didn't write it, but it was written about you. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
About your
my buddy
relationship?
Don wrote it for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the one that you did write was Let Me Down Easy. That was the first single. And that was actually written with Chris Cornell's brother, Pete.
Yeah, Peter Cornell. Yeah, he wrote that song for me. I told him I wanted something that was swampy and bluesy and dark. And we had reconnected a couple years ago, back in 2018. We hadn't seen one another 20 years at least. And I was like, man, how are you? I'm so sorry about what happened with Chris. And, it was great to catch up and see him. And I said, man, I would love to have a song from you on my next record if you're up for it. And then time came by, and I said, listen, you got something. Can you send it to me? And he sent me that track on acoustic, and we made the full band version feel exactly like his acoustic version felt. And I was so jazzed when that song was done. I love it. It's a dark, swampy, bluesy rock and roll track about I guess, redemption, in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Are you going to be doing a full album with him maybe?
Oh, I would love to.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, he's sent me a couple songs since then. He and I have actually talked about maybe putting a Cornell Martin record out, or Martin and Cornell record out, or something,
Yeah, so you've toured with all these big bands like we talked about, Metallica and Rush, and you sold millions of records. So I find it fascinating that you say you don't like your own voice. Like you don't listen back to recordings that you've sung on. You just trust the producer. Is that really true? Is that something you just say to sound modest in interviews, or did someone
No,
tell
it's
you
true.
did someone tell you weren't a good singer? Or where does that idea? Why don't you like your own voice?
No, I mean, ask any producer that's worked with you. They're like, yeah, he doesn't really want to listen back to it. It's just, I think that I don't like how my voice sounds. It's not what I wanted it to sound like when I sing songs. I would much rather sound like somebody like Caleb Ballwell is really great, dark whiskey timbre, to their voice, or Michael McDonald, or Van Morrison, or Mick Jagger or Robert Plant, these kind of, or Chris Robinson for that matter, these just really, there's so much in their voice and I don't hear it in mine. So,
Hmm.
I guess that's where it comes from, but get me behind a drum kit and I want to hear exactly what I did because that's what I love. I guess I love singing and I love being a singer in a band, but I'm a reluctant lead singer because I would much rather be a drummer. And that's probably where that comes from. It's like, if you feel that you got what you think the song needs as a producer, which is what I'm paying you for, then let's be done with it. Move on.
Okay. So do you think that maybe you'll switch back to the drums? You said at age 60 you can't sing anymore, so will you go back to drums then?
Yeah. Who am I going to play drums for at the age of 60? The
I
Rolling
don't know.
Stones.
Like what? I'm sure you could start with a group with some of the Seattle guys or something. Somebody will play with you.
Oh, yeah, I don't know about that.
Just do it for fun. I don't know. What are you going to do after you retire from singing?
Oh, I've got tons of other business things I'm involved with. My wife has a clothing line. I'm
Oh,
starting a men's swimwear line with her on that.
oh, don't you have
I
a
got a ton of
whiskey
stuff.
company too, or something like that? Did I hear that?
We're starting one, but that was
Bourbon.
supposed to kick off last year.
Oh, okay.
Bourbon, yeah, and it got obviously 2020 has put everything on hold for a lot of people, so that's on hold for us. But that's going to happen as well. That's me and Adam, my bass player.
Okay, that's super cool. Did you ever end up meeting the singer of Midnight Oil, Peter Garrett, to tell him?
No, I haven't. I haven't met him, and I cannot wait to tell him. I'm sure he's heard the story, but or maybe, I mean, maybe
Yeah.
not. But I certainly can't wait to meet him and tell him, thank you for giving me my career.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Okay, I apologize in advance for this question because I'm sure you're probably sick of the Courtney Love stuff. So I won't even make you tell the story. I'll just summarize it. But I did have a question about the end. So, because basically she talked all this shit about you, and then you guys did this magazine cover for The Rocket, which is a Seattle magazine, and you kind of like spoofed her album cover. And she talked a bunch of shit, and then she found your number somehow through a mutual friend or something. She calls you to talk shit and tell you off. This is the part of the story I don't understand. She talked to you for 2 hours. Why didn't you hang up the phone? Why did you let her chew you out for 2 hours?
She didn't call me. A friend of mine called her. He's really good friends with her. He's like, listen, what's your problem? Why are you busting my buddy's balls? And she's like, ah! But this is back when she was still doing a lot of drugs.
Sure.
And out of her skull. And he's like, hang on a second, I'm gonna put him on the phone. So I got on the phone with her and I was like, listen, I don't understand this. Like, I'm a huge fan of yours. I've got, every record you released. I love, Pretty on the Inside is my favorite whole record. And I don't understand. Like, I don't even know you. And she just rambled and rambled and rambled. And, and then of course, when the drugs take over in a conversation, I don't think half the time she knew what she was talking about. But my buddy ended up sending me his cell phone bill because, I think it was like $1,000. That was back when cell phones cost a fortune. He's like, you're going to pay this. I'm like, I didn't call her. You called her. Yeah, I still never met her. My drummer, Robin, Australia, and I said, don't you tell her that you play in Candlebox because you'll get kicked off the tour. But yeah, I don't know what that was about, but she just certainly did not like us at all.
That's weird. Yeah, it's weird that I hear all these stories about people not liking you guys, because I definitely remember like people not liking Stone Temple Pilots, which is really funny because now I feel like they're revered as this great band. But I remember at the time a lot of people thought Stone Temple Pilots was a ripoff band, but I don't remember the hate about Candlebox as much. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. Do you start a podcast? Is that started yet? Or are you going to start a podcast?
No, I haven't started. I am starting a podcast. It's called Rock and Roll. Look it up.
Okay. And
that's the name of the podcast.
It's called what?
It's called Rock and Roll. Look it up.
That'll come up. That'll bring up like 3,000 different podcasts, won't it?
Yeah.
And it's called, you're going to do like 9 songs. You're going to do like deep research into the songs, like stuff that's not on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to, I really, my concept behind it is, it's a saying that I came up with years ago. It's called rock and roll, look it up. And what that means is, people have kind of forgotten, what makes rock and roll, rock and roll. It's dangerous, and it needs an outlet, and people have to give it space. And the concept behind the podcast is really the people that I'm going to interview. I want them to pick these songs, and we're gonna go into them deep. These aren't going to be, they'll probably pick 1 or 2 popular songs, but it's really going to be, let's find out about this artist. Why you chose a song, and what it represents to you, and what that artist maybe was going through when they wrote that track. And these are going to be, an hour-long podcast, and probably won't even get to the 9 songs because we'll probably end up talking about them too much. But that's the concept behind it, and really kind of digging into what makes musicians tick. I've got a lot of friends lined up to do this that are musicians and rock stars alike, and looking forward to picking their brains about the songs that inspire them. And then there's also the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's, the ugly is going to be the song that they absolutely hate and don't understand why anybody bothers liking it. And that'll be interesting to find out.
Of their own songs?
Of anybody's. Okay. Their own or somebody else's. Do
you have, what are yours? What are the songs for you that are like that?
I can't give you that because then you're going to get my podcast.
Damn it. Okay. Well, I tried. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I do like to end, I think we covered everything. I do like to end each episode with a charity. I think you work with a breast cancer charity.
Just Breast Cancer Society.
Yeah. Okay. I could put that in the notes, and then people should check out your website. Do you guys, I couldn't see, I think you did have some shows lined up for the future. Shows in Seattle in November. Are those still happening? One at the Crocodile, one at the Paramount?
Yeah, we start up in August. We've got 3 shows in August, and then we start touring, I think, September 2nd all the way through November 10th.
Okay. And so are those dates locked up, or are you still working on that?
No, they're locked. Yeah, we'll be releasing all the dates, I think, in about 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I think I only saw like 3 on the website. So are you coming to Phoenix?
I think we are. I just don't. Yeah, I think we're playing the
Van Buren. Van Buren?
Van Buren, yeah.
Okay, that's it. Cool. I'll try to check that out if I'm around. So awesome. Well, thanks so much for doing this, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
You got it, Chuck. Thanks, man.
All right. Talk to you later.
We'll see you.
Bye-bye. Thank you to Kevin Martin of Candlebox. Again, the new album is called Wolves. Check it out. See the band live if they come to your city. I've seen them 3 times, and they're great. Make sure to follow Kevin and Candlebox on social media to keep up with tour dates, and check out their website. They have some really cool merch on there. Thank you so much for listening and making it all the way through this interview. If you enjoyed this one, check out some of the other episodes on my show. I got one with Vinny Dombrowski of Sponge, who we referenced that interview earlier. I've also interviewed Dale Crover from the Melvins, Robin Wilson from Gin Blossoms, Jeremy Popoff of Lit, and many more. So if you want to support the show, you can like, share, or comment on YouTube or social media. That helps me out. And make sure to subscribe or follow me on social media so you don't miss any of the future episodes. And if you want to go above and beyond, you can write me an iTunes review of the show. That will help a lot. Have a great rest of your day, and remember to shoot for the moon.